Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today I have a very special guest, a longtime friend of the channel, the great Anthony Abbate from Avoiding Babylon. How you doing, Anthony?
Pretty good, man. What's going on?
Oh, well, it's been a good week. I was on your show earlier this week, and that was a lot of fun. Um, and what do you guys have coming up? Anything big?
I think we got Kennedy on Tuesday. And we really just wing it, man. Like every episode, like when we had you on that day, like, oh, what are we talking about? Like, I honestly don't know. We'll figure it out. So my schedule is now the day of the show. I scroll to see if there's any like big news headlines, anything worth talking about, and we'll start talking about a story generally, and then it kind of just devolves into wherever it goes, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you do it well, that's for sure.
Thanks.
And Kennedy, he changed his channel, right? He changed the name of his channel.
Yeah, it's a mere tradition now.
Mere tradition. Very interesting. Yeah, I'd love to hear why that happened, but
I think he's doing a book on modernism.
okay.
Right now he's writing a book on modernism, and I think everything contemporary just disgusts him. So he's just decided to go with mere tradition. It's a play on C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just a little bit of rebranding he's doing.
Okay, cool. Well, I think so we're going to talk just general politics, and I thought we should start off with some Biden clips.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. You can beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Oh, it's so good.
He's at a point where, see, he wouldn't normally correct that. Normally, like he knows all eyes are on him, so he went back and fixed that. But normally he'll just make the flub and let it run. And it's really, it's just crazy to see how much the news has changed their approach to him, because you can see they're just looking to get him out. Once the news makes that decision, I don't see how you survive it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem for them is actually where the money goes. You know, if they get him out and it's not Kamala, like all the donor chest, I'm pretty sure it doesn't follow.
I think I just saw an article like 10 minutes ago that said there's 90 million that they froze up. Like the Democratic donors froze up 90 million that will not be released unless they swap Joe Biden out. So
okay.
Their political action committees are like, this guy's got to go. So if he has no money and no support, I don't see how he survives it.
Maybe the point is not for him to survive. I don't know.
Yeah, he seems pretty stubborn about it, though.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
That's a low, isn't it?
What's interesting is watching how the media we witnessed it when they just nitpicked everything Trump did, right? For how many years? For 8 years, we've watched every little mistake Trump made. They highlight it, and then they would edit and cover for Biden over and over. And now they're actually pointing out all of his mistakes. It's a weird thing to watch.
Yeah, I'm very untrusting of this turning on a dime thing.
Yeah, no, it's completely orchestrated. They did it to Andrew Cuomo. Do you remember when like he was the prince of the pandemic, and he was held up? But I think they threw him under the bus because people kept saying he should run for president. And I think they didn't like him because they don't have him as under control as they had Biden. So they just got, it's so strange when it happens, because as soon as you see one person on the left gets permission to go after him, they all do it in simultaneous form. Everybody just turns on a person and they go after them relentlessly until they bow out.
Well, it's not just the one person on the left, but one person in the accepted class.
Yeah.
Sort of like, because there are multiple people on the left that will critique him from time to time. I mean, Kennedy was, RFK was basically thrown out
Yeah.
uh, because they didn't want him to replace him because he's very anti-CIA, very much anti sort of the deep state, though he agrees with them on a lot of issues. It's not like he's some sort of paragon of
No, he's horrible.
virtue.
He's horrible on gun control. He's horrible on pro-life issues. He's a leftist, he's the only good things. The thing I'll say about Kennedy is if he were president, I wouldn't feel like he hated us, where I feel like Obama and Biden and even like everybody you see in the mainstream Democratic Party feels like they despise the right. Where I don't think Kennedy does. Kennedy does seem like he would want to unite. And I think that's the biggest fear of the deep state is a unified country.
Yes, because in order to gain power, you need to have people disunited.
Divided against each other, fighting with each other, all of us fighting over these ridiculous culture war issues. Like, I have no patience whatsoever for the trans debate anymore. Like, I don't want to see libs of TikTok's videos of look what they're doing. And I don't care at all. It doesn't affect me in any way at all. None of my children are going to be suffering from this. It's not anything I need to worry about. I don't care who they're brainwashing. Like, if we're going to be Catholic and raise our families that way, like, it's not about sheltering your kids. It's about giving them the ability to stand against this stuff. Like, your kids are going to be exposed to propaganda no matter what. We're all exposed to it. So we were talking the other night about immigration, and we were using their terms. We were talking, calling them migrants, where 10 years ago we would have said illegal alien. It's just, all of us are subjected to propaganda, and all of us fall for it to some degree or another. So the best thing you can do is just try to be aware of when you're being fed propaganda.
Yes, and this is, the propaganda, but propaganda needs to be curtailed somewhere, and we need to do it at least in the school system in some way.
Propaganda is not always bad.
Well, yes, but this is the only propaganda they give us.
Right. Yeah.
They're not willing to give us anything, any alternative. They will squash anything that contradicts it.
Maybe we need to step up our propaganda.
Well, yeah, definitely. Of course. But like that means homeschooling or actual Catholic schools.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem with Catholic schools is pretty abysmal. Hopefully they avoid the rainbow stuff, but they're pretty bad on everything else. Feminism is everywhere.
Well, so how do you deal with your kids going through school?
It's funny. All of my kids are like pretty aware of everything going on. We just have like thorough conversations with my children regularly. My kids think all this stuff is completely nuts. My son is like a Gen Z, like he's one of those that uses like severe irony. All his friends would wear Trump stuff to school just to troll people. Like my son's that far over, and my daughters too. My daughters just think this stuff is just completely insane. They'll come home, they'll be like, oh my goodness, there's some kid wearing this. And they all of my kids are pretty well formed in their Catholic faith to know this stuff is just nuts. And a lot of it is not even so much school. Everybody talks about school, but it's also your family, like your extended family. So if you have an extended family where, one of your siblings or one of your aunts or uncles are in a same-sex relationship and their kids are like, you could pull your kids out of the school. They're still going to be exposed to this stuff. And I have family members that are living out of wedlock and having children. My children see that, and I typically will use those examples of what a life looks like when they don't have God in it, because you could see how much a person's life actually just has no moral foundation whatsoever when you don't have God in it. And using that has actually been a really good, a way of catechesis for my children.
Well, we're just talking about the youth, which I am Gen Z, though of the older variety
Yeah.
of Gen Z. It's quite interesting because the sort of the younger people are moving right, not like in huge numbers, but as you said, your son's a good example, sort of trolling people with the Trump stuff, not necessarily because like they're really devoted to it or anything, but that's the only rebellion that they kind
Yeah.
of have at the moment. And then older people are apparently moving to Biden, or like
Well, it's also even in the younger generation. We were talking about it last night. It's very sex segregated. Okay, so you have the men are overwhelmingly going not just conservative but reactionary conservative, but the girls are going ridiculously left. That's where, so when you see that, you'll see like 20% of modern, of Gen Z identifies on the rainbow spectrum somewhere. Those are almost all women. It's women deciding, okay, now I'm non-binary, I'm this, I'm that. It's because women are more susceptible to that propaganda, I think. And that's really the way God designed it, because he meant for women to kind of follow their husband's lead. So if you're breaking marriages apart and people aren't getting married until much later in life, you're going to see women just fall for whatever influences they have in their life, and they're just going to kind of follow in lockstep. Now, the older generation going left, I think that they're just a product of post World War II propaganda too. They came out and were just fed just American propaganda, and they thought this liberal democracy thing, this project that we were doing, is the greatest thing in the world. And I think they saw, especially when it comes to the LGBT stuff, the way they framed it was as if it was a continuation of the civil rights movement. And civil rights, as warped as it wound up getting, the idea that all men are created equal is a good thing, right? It's seeing that regardless of race, you hold the same dignity no matter what. That's a very Christian principle. So when they managed to swing that argument into the sex argument, that's how I think they were able to warp the older generation.
Well, so civil rights, all men are created equal. I dispute that that being true, because Saint Gregory the Great actually said, because it actually comes from Saint Gregory the Great, but it's a misquote. He says all men are created equal except because of sin, which makes all men unequal.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying equal in dignity.
Yes, but
right?
and obviously by race, that's a different concept. But all
Yeah.
men are not created equal.
No.
And that's one of the flaws of sort of the liberal society we live in. But it's civil rights is almost like a overcorrection.
Yeah.
It's a protection.
Yeah, well,
of
look,
people.
what they actually did with it was wrong, because it was just reverse racism. But
Well,
the
it's
idea
not
that
reverse anything.
yeah, the idea that no people should be enslaved, those are all Christian principles that
Yeah, but
they were
that's not
working
civil
on.
rights. That's
No, it's not.
that's like 1800s. Civil
Yeah.
rights is the 60s. It wasn't like it improved anything either. The people, it's not like, blacks couldn't own businesses
Yeah.
or they actually were pretty well off. They had good families, good businesses. It was separated mostly. I mean, Jim Crow was bad. I do believe that. But what I'm saying is the civil rights laws were bad, even in themselves,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can't force people to like each other.
Yeah.
You could make sure they don't hurt each other, which is
Well,
kind
I
of
don't know if desegregation was even a good idea. And I'm not even talking about racially. Like, if you looked at the way America was, especially New York, if you look at how New York was, all these immigrants would come in and they would gather in ghettos, right? So there would be an Italian area and a German area, and there would be, and the blacks would have their area. And I don't know if that's necessarily wrong. It helps you keep a culture. It helps you keep a community together. This forced integration may not have been a great thing. I think that was, I watched this documentary on New York. It was so incredible to watch. Robert Moses designed all of New York, essentially, like all the highway systems and parkway systems. And the way he did it, once the automobile was invented, he started making all the suburbs out on Long Island, and it ripped these communities apart. He would send a highway right through an Italian ghetto, essentially, forcing those people to leave. We have this idea of the nuclear family as if the nuclear family is the end all be all. It was never like that. Like 100 years ago, it wasn't the mom, dad, and kids. It was the mom, dad, kids, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, all gathered around the parish community. And they lived together, and they would all help each other. And when these two kids got married, the parents would help, the grandparents would help. And they made it so that now it's the nuclear family. And we talk about that like they're trying to destroy the nuclear family. The nuclear family should never be the goal. The goal should be the extended family together working with each other.
Indeed. I mean, society is a collection of families. That's the only way society can function is families working together. And that's why we used to live under monarchies, because it was basically one family at the top with some families that were closer to the royal family, basically working directly under them, and then you get further down with other families working, and it's basically a structure of different families all working in a hierarchy together for the good of society. And one of the great things about that was personal rule. Every time, or nowadays, whenever you're when there's trouble, it's more or less impersonal. There's no person that's like you can like actually blame usually. Everyone blames their politicians, but they're more or less, the blame is ambiguous. So we can't really say this person's to blame. So then they can be like, oh no, it was that person. Like they can easily put blame on everyone else. Back in the day, you always knew who was to blame, at least. I mean, you may not have been able to do much about it, but at least you knew who was the problem.
Yeah, it's a strange system we have in place now. And the idea is to keep us all fighting at each other's throats, so that even within families, you have this disagreement because this person leans this way politically, this person leans that. It divides families, it divides everybody. And as long as we're divided, like, you never look at the actual problem, which is the government that's in place right now and the whole entire political system that's in place right now. People ask why I'm still in New York. The reason I haven't left New York is partially my job, but the other is I have 8 siblings. I have 4 brothers, 4 sisters. All of their kids and my kids are close. We all live on Long Island together. We see our parents, we see the grandparents. It's a really tight-knit family that I have. All of the husbands and wives like each other's spouses and things like that. So to rip that unit apart seems like it would be catastrophic for my family life,
Yeah, well, this community and like the whole mentality of everyone constantly moving around to get out of these states is in some ways part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to have no identity whatsoever. You'd consider yourself a New Yorker, right?
Yeah, I mean, my family's been here since 1912,
Like, would you want to be anything but a New Yorker?
Nah, no matter where I went, I would be a New Yorker displaced,
Yeah, but like a displaced New Yorker, then sort of you're going to be affected by everything around you.
Yeah.
You're going to be changed. Like we're both in really blue areas. I'm in Illinois. You're in New York. I for similar reasons don't want to necessarily leave. I mean, I'd like to change my state around and stuff like that, though unlikely it is, because I believe both our states are corrupt.
Do you think they are okay? So now, if everybody that's stuck in a blue state but maybe leans more conservative, if they start leaving their state, heading to more red states, you're going to see the divide widen between this country, right? And the blue states will get bluer because all the conservatives are leaving, and the red states will get redder because all these influx of conservatives. It's going to make this country really, really unstable the further down we go. Do you think this country stays together over the next decade?
Well, it's almost a question of should the country stay together. I'm kind of afraid that it will stay together, because the more I think about it, like if you look at like the United Kingdom, you can make real big changes on a local level there, and that will really affect sort of the national level, because they've only got like I don't know, maybe 15 million people or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. I could be wrong about the number, but it's not that many. Like if our states were really treated like they had the real authority over us.
Like individual countries.
Yes, exactly. If we treated our states like individual countries, we could actually make some serious difference on
On a
at the
local level.
local level. But nobody cares about the local level because of the show in Washington.
Yeah, that's a byproduct of technology. The thing is, I worry about how it's going to break up. Because yeah, all right, it may break up, but does it break up non-violently? I don't see how look what even during the first Civil War, what they did to keep it together. And that was 200 years ago with, 160 years ago, whenever it was, with the technology they had at the time. With the technology we have now, I don't see the American empire, ever allowing itself to lose power.
Well, it's interesting sort of with Biden at the moment. Biden is a complete train wreck. I mean, he's almost the biggest. He could be the poster child of secession. Like, why stay under his control, more or less?
Well, they're going to take. Okay, so if they take him out, who replaces him? You think Kamala replaces him?
I don't know. I don't understand how they could get out of Kamala. Like, I don't understand how they. I mean, the amount of people they'll lose because of basically her niche support is pretty dire.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
I don't know how this election's going to go, man. I
yeah,
have no idea what's going to happen. It's funny because the last election, we knew they were setting up something that was just, you kind of saw the plan ahead of time. We saw all these articles coming out about a color revolution happening, and this is what they're going to do. We thought it might be possible for the support for Trump to be so overwhelming that they wouldn't be able to pull it off, but we kind of knew it was coming. This time, I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know. It looks like it has something to do with the immigration and the ballot system. It looks something like that. Like as they're bringing these immigrants in, they're producing ballots for them, and I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what sort of fortification would look like for them, but also I know sort of democracy is fake. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course.
Does it really matter? Like it only really matters as a way of sort of determining or telling the temperature to the elites what how the people feel, and it's very clear that the people are discontented now. None of that's going to change until an elite were to take over, or would be for an elite to take over the other elite, would take power from the elite. And that's not necessarily violent or anything. I mean, look at all the more or less coups in the American government that have happened. We always say, or there's like, I think the French are on their fifth republic right now. Like they cannot keep a constitution or republic going. But I think our system, there's basically hidden coups that we're not really privy to, like, or that we don't think of coups as coups because they're not historically sort of defined as such for us. So, like, remember the first way of government we had was the Articles of Confederation, and then the elite couped that government, and created the Constitution. So that was more or less the First Republic fell like almost right in the beginning, and was replaced with a Second Republic. The Civil War was another republic. You
I
could
would say every election is a coup.
well, I mean, in some sense, but a coup usually means a taking of power through
Subversive means.
through through not unstandard means, at least. So
Yeah.
so the Civil War was through war. You know, it was through that was the one that was through bloodshed, which is the odd man out in the other ones. Though, so then sort of the Great Depression coup, I would say, the basically the domination of the state under FDR and the forcing the Supreme Court to rule in favor of the government on many different issues, mostly related to state power. And then the civil rights laws were the most recent coups. So our government has already been unstable enough for many different government changes. So my point is a elite that is more favorable to the populace is seemingly, to me, the only answer for stability.
Is there an opposing elite to the global elites right now? It looks like Elon Musk kind of could be, but he's also, I don't know if he's playing along with them and just like he could be a complete facade where he's just trying to collect all of our data because he sees the AI coming down the pike and he wants to be the one running it.
Well, you know what's kind of funny about AI is, you know how everyone always thinks AI is going to decide, or like a lot of our movies are like, AI has decided that humans are no longer necessary and that they need to be removed.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of leftism is humans deciding that humans are no longer necessary. Like, I mean, which of course makes sense in the sense that the people that came up with the idea that AI is going to turn against humanity are humans themselves. So we obviously come up with the idea.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, exactly. And then we program the AI, and if the people that despise humanity program the AI, which it seems like many of them are, or many versions of AI are programmed by people who hate themselves or hate humanity as a whole and wish us to be removed in order to save the planet. You know, that's basically the fulfilling prophecy. But yes, do we have another elite? But I think the real question is, are we working to build a new elite? Right? Like, we should have a mindset of we must build an elite. This is why like inheritance and building organizations and structures of power are very important, because if we can build our own structures, and as the other structures collapse, you know, the only thing needed to be done is just to replace them, which is more or less what the other coups did. You know, it wasn't bloody. It was, they set things up, then the other setup failed, and they replaced them with the new setup.
Yeah, I wonder if there is like a civil war between the elites that exist now, because I don't see how any of us are building any kind of elite. You know,
well, but I mean, there is a Zionist sort of civil war, you know, like Zionist and anti-Zionist civil war, but it's not really a civil war for our benefit.
Yeah,
like it's a civil war that, you know, we could exploit theoretically. You know, it will probably weaken both sides to some degree.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation happening right now. It's funny to watch how people are less afraid to start speaking their mind about their issues with that particular group, you know.
Well, I mean, but like in some ways Zionism is in some sort, to some degree, separated at least in some ways, from the group that they're supposedly advocating for. I mean, there are so many evangelical Christians
Who
that
are
are
Zionists.
Zionists.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you can't imagine how much of our foreign policy is based on insane Protestant eschatology.
yeah, well, I mean, what's it called, where the kind of theology where the Jews aren't or the Jews still have uh
They're the chosen people still, right?
yeah, like they're still saved by the old covenant. Do you know what is
Like
that?
dual covenant
Something like that.
theology or something. Yeah, I don't know, but I just know so many Protestants want to see a third temple built because they think that means the rapture will happen. They'll be taken up into the sky as the tribulation happens on earth. It's insane.
Well, it's just a weird thing to like come to the or to believe that like that Jews have the same status as Christians.
Yeah, in the eyes of God.
In the eyes of God, when pretty much all the New Testament is them rejecting Christ.
Yeah.
So like that's just bizarre. Which of course, if like Jews convert to Christianity, that's a completely different story. Then they're Christians, at least in versus if they don't. Anyways, that it's so but that conflict between the elite and this other version of the elite is sort of one of those things that you can just sit back and watch themselves destroy each other.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate, or I guess in some ways it's fortunate to watch sort of the Democratic Party destroy itself. But I think it's very clear that the Republicans don't really have a good position on this at all, and that Trump is definitely going to continue his policy with Israel that he already had previously.
Do you think Trump right now is just saying things that sound moderate because he wants to kind of play the mild-tempered guy to try and get those voters who are like on the fence, and then once he gets in, you think the real Trump will come out, or do you think he's actually going to reject the idea of this Project 2025 thing?
Well, I don't know exactly what the details of Project 2025 are. Do you know what sort of do you want to pull up sort of the details?
I mean, all the things I saw on it were pretty good.
Yeah, I saw No Fault Divorce as one of them, which I don't know is true. I don't know if that's true, but that's also sounded good. But I don't think Trump's willing to do such a thing, and I think that's why he's saying it.
Yeah, he's backing away from all of it.
Yeah, but I just don't believe that's in his character to do any of the things that.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that he wants to be liked too much. I think he's a narcissist.
Trump's like a Napoleon figure. He is the revolution. It doesn't matter what he believes. It doesn't matter what other people believe. He is going to be the continuation of the system that he creates for himself.
Yeah, I wonder what happens after him too.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is if the Republican Party dies after Trump, I think we might have an opportunity for some success.
I don't know, man. I'm very confused about what the next year looks like, and then after that, what does the next decade look like? What does it look like in 2030 even,
Well, the boomers will be gone.
How old is the youngest boomer right now?
What is it? Maybe something like 60 or so.
60, 65. Yeah, we still got another 20 years of them.
Yeah, but the older boomers, like we'll be left with like the cusp boomers.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe 2040, the boomers will be gone for the most part. At least not they won't be a sizable force, because that's the thing is it's really about numbers why they're so important is because they're the largest generation.
Yeah, I just think we have to take into account the amount of technological advance that's going to happen over the next few years. You have to take into account the amount of contention there is throughout the world right now. How many, you have to take immigration into account. Like over the next 5 years, who knows what this country looks like? It really could look completely different than it does now.
I'm skeptical of like how much technology will increase. Like,
I'm not. I think AI is going to completely blow people's minds. I don't know that, you know what it is. Most people don't know how to use it yet, but once they make it so user friendly that the average person is able to just integrate it like they do their iPhone, I think you're going to see some wild stuff. I think people they're going to use it for propaganda. They're going to use it for, I just think it's going to rewire the way the entire economy works, everything. There's going to, any jobs that can be replaced, like that can swap humans out, those humans will be swapped out.
maybe I think that it's just like when the computer, when it was introduced, I think people thought it wasn't going to have much an effect. And then it had a big effect. I'm not saying AI is not going to have a big effect. I'm just saying that I think it will actually have a little less effect than people think it will at the moment. Like, I think people think it's going to be sort of upending everything. And I'm guessing it's most likely just going to turn into a tool that
I think it's just going to wipe entire industries out. Like AI will never take over road building. I'm pretty sure my industry's safe. You know what I mean? But I think all these people that have desk jobs where their job is to, any kind of editing, any kind of journalism, anything, I just think all of that's just going to be gone, and you're just going to be fed whatever the machine wants to give you.
Maybe propagandists will be gone, more or less.
Yeah, but you'll still be getting propaganda, just a very fine-tuned version of it that's way better than what we could do.
No, I think AI, by virtue of it being a creation of humanity, can't actually outdo humanity. Maybe it could do as good as maybe the best human, or the best is like a moderately good human, maybe. But I don't think it's going to be able to sort of completely do, except in like speed. Like, it obviously is able to outdo them in speed, or outdo us in speed, but probably not quality. Because how can a human create something that is then better at writing?
Well, you're not
like something like that.
You're not. Well, okay, so that's a fair point, right? I don't think it can write better, maybe, right? Like storytelling. Storytelling is still something that's very unique to humanity. But
that's propaganda.
But you can ask ChatGPT to write you a story. I don't know if it's going to come up with something as moving as the Lord of the Rings yet, but we don't know. Like, you have to understand, this thing is capable of looking over every single story that's ever been written in human history, seeing what kinds of stories actually do provoke an emotional reaction from people, and it can actually give you a new story using all of those elements. I don't know, man. It might be pretty good at writing stories soon.
Maybe it will take us a while to not be able to tell. Like, maybe we'll be able to tell for a while. Maybe after a certain amount of generations who have no contact with non-AI, maybe then they'd begin to fall for not be able to recognize AI when they see it. But you'd have to sort of, if you asked an AI for a story, you'd more or less probably have to give them so many details about
what kind of story
and what kind of person should be writing the story. Like, if I were to describe, you'd have to describe Tolkien in his entirety, more or less, in order to get maybe AI to be able to figure out how to write the Lord of the Rings,
or like a sequel to the Return of the King.
Like, that'd be interesting. Asking them, it's like Tolkien did sort of try to write a sequel to the Lord of the Rings, but he said it was too dark and sinister of a story to write, and that it just wasn't worth writing. But
That's interesting.
yeah, I'm gonna be doing a stream on it in August with some Tolkien people.
Did he write any of it? Like, or did he
Yeah.
give a what was it about? Do we know?
Well, it seems like it was mostly about uh, cults starting up in Gondor, worshiping like the devil, like
Wow.
like satanic cults, and people wanting to be goblins or wanting to be orcs. Play as, or like kids were playing as orcs.
That's interesting, actually. I would have loved to see that come to fruition, man.
Well, you can read parts of it, like the beginning of it.
But because you're seeing that now.
Yeah, well, he said, I mean, Tolkien always said that the more or less the reason, or I'm going to talk about this more thoroughly in that stream, but like his future, after the return of the king, the dominion of man is just our life, what we're living through, like once the elves and the dwarves are gone away, then what do you have? There's no magic left. It's just you living in Earth. You're living on Earth.
It's almost the King Arthurian legend at that point. Like the Arthurian legend is, you still have paganism around, so you still have these sorcerers and stuff like that. That's why you have Merlin around, but Christianity is rising. So you're still seeing these pagan elements in the story, but they kind of meld into Christianity, and you see Christendom coming about through it.
Well, I mean, Tolkien's very explicit that Gondor is more or less Israel.
Yeah.
Because the Davidic kingship is Aragorn's.
Yeah.
It's just the Christ hasn't come yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been interesting to watch him play that out.
Yeah, well, he was so methodical and so like picky that it would have taken him forever. I mean, he already made many stories, but he never or a lot of those stories had be posthumously published.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the story is more or less him or this older man who lived in the time, remembers the time of Aragorn. It's his son's during the reign of Aragorn's son, and he's being visited by his son's friend, who's been a companion to him because his son's been off at port or something, in the army or something, or the Navy or whatever. And they have a whole conversation about morality, more or less, why do orcs destroy,
does he have prophecy in it? Do you know?
In the most,
in that sequel, is there prophecy where they're if Aragorn's the Davidic king, is there a prophecy for a future Christ?
Yeah, well, I mean, he had a prophecy along back in in his original stories, where at the end all evil and all good would be resurrected, more or less, and then there would be a great battle in the end, and then the devil would be slain. But
it's essentially Revelation.
Yeah, and he's so that's the only thing. He more or less has a revelation, but he doesn't have any inkling of the New Testament, which is kind of interesting. But no, it's more or less like the beginning of a thriller. That's what he called it. It was merely a thriller, and it wasn't worth doing.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, very very strange.
Are you going to review the next season of what the heck is it?
Rings of Power.
Rings of Power.
I don't know. Do you want to do it with me?
Oh man, I don't know if I can sit through it.
Well,
I bailed on last season.
You could do that. Well, you could do it where, I mean, I've been doing it sometimes where I would just explain, I could explain you the story.
I'll pop in for one episode. I don't know if I can do the whole series with you. I'll do what I did last time. I think last season, I popped in for one episode. It was me, you, and Darren or something.
Yeah, probably. Well, no, I think it was just you, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I'm torn. It just looks so terrible.
Yeah.
There's so it's so cringy.
That last season was bad, man.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it is, you know, the similarities between that story, the sort of what Tolkien called the new shadow, yeah, has a lot of similarities to our life because it's more or less, um, you know, maybe leading to a French Revolution of some kind. You know, the overthrow of the king and the kingdom and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And you know, I don't know what
Yeah, he
would
was
come
great
after
at
that.
portraying like human nature and our weaknesses and our vices and things like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that he didn't want to tell stories about peacetime because he said they are too boring,
Hmm.
and then men will get uneasy with goodness.
Well, you can see that's actually happening in culture right now, right? Like they say, that's why good times make soft men.
Yeah, but we're not even in goodness. We haven't been in goodness in
No, but
like
we've been in easy times, times of
yes.
peace relative to what our country is in, right? So, yeah, all right, we fought a war in Afghanistan, but we don't see that. Like, we're basically in peacetime. We haven't known anything of war, we haven't known anything of strife. So, you're starting to see that men get antsy and it's almost like they're not happy. And we're living through some of those interesting times right now because you're starting to see a groundswell of something right now.
Yeah, well, as I said though, it's the big difference is that, you know, I think people are antsy because, or one of the reasons is because the times are not good and because our society hasn't been good. Like
Yeah.
our society is broken down so much because of the way we've been led in peacetime.
Yeah, they've intentionally tried to break our anything that united us, they've intentionally tried to tear apart.
Yeah. One of the things you sort of brought up about uh sort of the immigration and stuff like that, you know, you talked about Italians being in one place, sort of the Irish being another. Isn't didn't that sort of bring up sort of sectarianism too?
I don't know. I know, people were used and like used for voting, so they were taken advantage of, things like that. But I don't know. What do you mean by sectarianism?
Like, are we gonna if the Irish, the Italians, if the Germans hadn't integrated, would there have just become at some point, if there was enough
Tension
numbers?
between
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Like if because I mean Germans, there were churches where the Italians weren't welcome because it was an Irish church, and
Yeah,
vice
that's an
versa.
interesting question because the thing about being Catholic is once you worship at the same altar, intermarriage is totally acceptable.
Well, yeah, but it's not intermarriage in the same sense. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
because
Like my dad married an Irish girl or something, like
no,
so you're naturally going to have those. You're not going to have sectarianism because the Italian guy's picking up the Irish chick and they're eventually going to integrate.
well, that's what I mean by like, isn't some integration necessary? Yeah, because
Yeah, but I don't think entire communities needed to be broken up, right? I
well,
think the way
not
they
by
did
force, not by
no, the way
force.
they did the suburbs
Well,
was
yeah, I'm talking about like the fact that I'm not talking about like black and white.
no, I know you're talking about like Italian, Irish,
Okay,
German,
never mind.
yeah, European. I'm saying, but the way the suburb system was designed was to break the family away from each other. And it used to be this parish community, and you'd have all these families. So even if you married the Irish chick up the block from the other community, she would integrate into the Italian community because you would integrate into her Irish community because you'd stay with the family. So I think there wouldn't be sectarianism because you would have that intermarriage aspect. And I mean, there was a lot of tension between the Irish and the Italians and the Germans for a long time. It was especially the Irish and the Italians in New York.
That's
Like
just
the Irish cops in New York were brutal to the Italians, man.
well, yeah, it's not like there was a mafia or anything.
Well, that's what kind of forced the mafia to get organized because
Yeah.
you had Tammany Hall, which was the Irish mafia, because they were all cops, and then the Italian mob kind of got forced to stand up for them. Like the Italians had to find a way to stand up for themselves. So that's kind of how, I mean, the Italian mob really comes about in Prohibition era.
Sure.
You know, once Prohibition comes, that's when you have them all sit down, and that's when La Cosa Nostra comes about and stuff. But it was, a lot of it had to do with the Irish.
Yes. Well, all the pretty much Catholic hierarchical drama before sort of Vatican II was between the Germans and the Irish.
Yeah.
So it's this thing going back and forth. But what I'm saying is, don't we need some, like, to be a, like, I mean, we're arguing about this regarding immigration. How is it not different? You know, shouldn't we also be trying to sort of integrate?
Because you're bringing non-Christians in.
No, I'm talking about
No, I don't mind this. I honestly don't mind Spanish Catholics coming into this country.
I'm not saying it's bad inherently. I'm saying if you're getting, you don't want so many at one point.
Yeah, of course. But they said the same thing about the Italians. Like, I'm just, look, if it was an influx of Spanish Catholics coming in and they were going to become American, I wouldn't be that worried.
But becoming American is integrating.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. If you don't, I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, we should be integrating them, but but it's something different about this current immigration process. Is all I'm saying. Okay. We're not bringing in Christians as, like, you're talking
for the purpose of Christian, or, you know, we're bringing in random people, and some of them may be Christian.
We're bringing in almost purposely non-Christians to completely undo Christian morality in America. And you're talking about a culture clash that's going to come, because even when the Italian and European immigrants came in, they still had that Christian foundation. What we're aiming towards now is not a Christian foundation anymore, and it's just going to lead to more fracturing of this country. This country is just completely fractured at this point. I think the future is going to be small communities of like-minded people, and you're going to have some kind of balkanization happen. I think you're right. You know, just the country can't stay united.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's more or less inevitable.
Let's just hope it's nonviolent.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's why I made I proposed the fact that most of our coups, most of our big changes have not been violent, actually.
Yeah.
But it probably won't be. It will definitely not be good for a certain group of people, you know, depending on who wins.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is why we need some sort of elite that is working on our behalf. And, you know, we need some sort of, like, we're not going to be able to bring the other elite, you know, the other elite over to our side.
Yeah, no, they're going to have to be defeated.
Exactly. And so many Republicans believe that they can get back into the elite and take over the elite, which, you know, I think is, you know, like, it's pretty obvious that they're not getting in.
Yeah, we need to just form our own.
Exactly. But yeah, so, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in this coming election.
Only time will tell.
Who knows if it's even going to have a big effect on the stuff we're talking about. Like, is Trump even going to be a worthwhile president? I
still don't think he's winning.
Well, is Biden, if Biden retains the presidency,
I don't think it's Biden either, but it's not Trump.
Okay.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Is not Trump, whoever not Trump is not Trump going to be, like, a good in some sense, in the sense of devastating to our to people's belief in into our republic, into democracy, into the concept of democracy, enough to bring people out of sort of their delusionary 90s mentality?
Yeah, I see it starting now. I see people finally starting to say democracy sucks. It's the first time I've ever seen it.
Would Trump winning be damaging to that and actually be a problem?
No, because I think what you're going to see if Trump wins is going to be what we saw in 2020 before the last election. I think it's just you're going to see the other side go so ballistic that no matter what, I just think the whole facade crumbles. I think
Okay.
democracy's on its last leg.
So you're giving out white pills.
Yeah, in some sense. I just think it's going to be a dark period before we get there.
Well, yes, things will get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
Any transition like this, which we are going through some sort of transition, and we just don't know what it's going to turn into, is going to be a discomfort.
Yeah.
For us, and maybe even make a few martyrs.
Yeah, because you're contending with not just the state, but all the discontent in the church as well. Like there's a lot going on right now. I mean, it's
universal discontent.
Yeah.
I mean, even in like the Hollywood propaganda, there's discontent. Like it's not just politics. It's not just sort of church related. It's pretty much every aspect of society.
Yeah.
And Biden said it himself that welcome President Putin, president of Ukraine. In some sense, I think Biden might be on point with the premise that Putin will be the president of Ukraine, or to some degree, he's already is the he's, in other words, Putin's already won. It's just how long will it take for the West to basically decide we're
accept it.
We're tired of this story, or that sort of thing. So I don't know. Anything before we go?
No, man, this is an interesting conversation. I typically just get like, especially it's weird because last election I was so gung-ho about that election. And this time, after what we went through with that last election, I just almost don't care anymore. And I think that was a necessary step towards what you're talking about. Just screw democracy, man. It's got to go. And I'm kind of glad it happened the way it did, because I think it made everybody see what a facade this whole system is.
Yeah, well said, Anthony. Thank you. That's a great way to end it. Thank you, everyone. Check out Avoiding Babylon if you haven't already. Links will be in the description. Thank you, everyone. And please like, share, comment, and subscribe on Plotlines. And God bless everyone. Bye.
Thanks.